show. One more Mubin would say. It's funny. Some people think I am Dr. Mubin because we have his last name is the same as my first name. I think, yes, we are streaming on Twitter. Great. Should be streaming everywhere. All right. So this is another live stream where we do live stream Q&As. If you'd like to watch the entire live stream beginning to end, then you can watch it at pro.longcovidreset.com. And we've gotten some complaints about this platform. We're working on fixing it up, making it easier to understand how to get all the content. But there should be a banner up. Maybe not. There's supposed to be a banner up. I don't see it, but usually there's a banner whenever I'm live streaming and it says click here to watch the live stream. So perhaps that will be up later. But regardless, if you join pro.longcovidreset.com and go to the videos, there is a live stream section. I know it's a little complicated to find it right now, but we are working on making it easier. If you stream down, there's a weekly live Q&A section. But yeah, okay, so it does look like there's a banner. So if you go to pro.longcovidreset.com, you have to click the videos at the top. There's a videos button at the top. Once you click that, then on the next page, which is basically pro.longcovidreset.com/videos, on that page, there is a link to this current live stream. And the reason that's there is because we switch over to the Pro website after about 15 to 20 minutes, and the rest of the live stream is available on pro.longcovidreset.com. All right, so without further ado, we will jump into the questions. So Vicky says, speaking of MRIs, do you have reservations about cardiac MRIs specifically, even without the dye? Thank you. Yeah, I'm not so sure about MRIs. I had a weird experience in residency where I was, and I don't explain it, maybe if somebody could help me here. I would love to talk to somebody who knows more about MRIs and the effect that they have on the human body. But we used to have a MRI scanner inside the ER in the hospital that I worked. So I guess they didn't have room inside the hospital. It was an old hospital, probably 100 years old. They had upgraded it as much as possible, but there's just a fixed amount of space in the building, and it was in downtown Brooklyn. So anyway, this they had a in the back, of this portable MRI was in there. So anyway, one day I was on a lunch break or something, and I was just walking past the trailer, and all of a sudden, like uncontrollably, my body veered to the left and kind of like down. And it lasted for like a couple of seconds, but it was the most bizarre thing. Nothing like that has happened before or since to me. And it was just, it had reached into my brain and just like turned me to the side. I don't know if that had something to do with the MRI or what. Did I have like a seizure or something? I don't know. I thought that maybe it had something to do with the MRI machine. So anyway, I really don't know. I know that the dye can certainly cause problems. It can cause heart problems, kidney problems for sure, skin problems. People can end up with Stevens-Johnson syndrome and all kinds of, it's like with that into yourself, it can cause some harm. But yeah, I don't know, theoretically, so how do MRIs work? I don't really honestly know very much, but they change like the spin or something on the electrons, or what do? They change like the electrons into his volume. It's kind of strange how they work, and you would think that maybe there's something we don't really understand fully about the way that the body works, and that might not be something beneficial to do to yourself. So I think that the state of the art in our understanding of the way the body works suggests that there's no problem with MRI, but that's because it's not, as far as we know, changing anything at the level. But what if your brain, at a submolecular level, what if it's working at a a quantum mechanical level, right? So may be interfering with your health. It's possible. So I don't know. I mean, as far as I know, there's no reports of any problems with just MRI machines. So they have the radiation that you get from CT scans. So we know for sure that most CT scans are harmful because they irradiate you. So they give you radiation. So an MRI is just a super strong magnet. Whether or not that's harmless or whether it does something to you, I don't know. But I would love to learn more about it if anyone has any references or sites where you can learn more about. People supposedly use magnets to heal themselves, but this is a super strong magnet. I mean, nothing like this is found in nature, right? It's an extremely strong magnetic field that you're entering into, so there may be some issues. It's an electromagnetic field, right? All right, Stefan Lindemann says, is HBO or hyperbaric oxygen, I guess, or 40 hours of oxygen as effective for long COVID as Mark Girardeau claims it to be? What is the potential risk of oxygen therapy? Can one use oxygen bottles sold on Amazon? Yeah. So the oxygen bottles, I mean, that's just like kind of silly, right? Like you're getting a tiny amount of oxygen, pure oxygen in a bottle. You need an oxygen concentrator if you want to use oxygen therapy of any kind, because you want to be breathing the pure oxygen for a while. You want to breathe it for, an hour, 2 hours a day. So pure oxygen can have some toxicity, so there can be lung toxicity from pure oxygen because you get oxidative stress from oxygen. So very high levels of oxygen and oxidative stress, and that's why your body pounding. That's why you are consuming turmeric and all these, supplements that are antioxidants, because oxygen can damage you, right? But at the same time, as Mark Girardeau mentioned, it's triggering the upregulation of stem cells, which is something that you want. So you don't want to completely get rid of oxidation, and you can harness oxidation to do good things like stimulate stem cells, and those enter your bloodstream and in your body, and wherever there's something damaged that needs to be fixed, they can fix it. So, hyperbaric oxygen for 40 plus hours has been studied in a lot of things, right? Like it's been studied for Parkinson's and dementia, and there are definitely signals of benefit in those cases for people who use hyperbaric oxygen. So if you're using hyperbaric oxygen for 40 hours, you're talking about a study where they probably did 3 atmospheres or higher, or around 3 atmospheres, maybe 2.5 or 3 atmospheres, which is at the higher end, and you need a rigid chamber for that. And so if you're going to be doing it at home, if you're going to rent a machine that's much lower atmosphere, like 1.4, 1.3, or 1.5, a semi-rigid or just like a non-rigid chamber, like a big balloon that you rent, those can rent for like $500 or $600, a lot cheaper than going to a rigid chamber somewhere else, and it's a lot more convenient. But if you're going to do the lower the lower atmospheric pressure, you would have to probably do twice as long. So if you're at half the atmospheric pressure, then you would probably need 80 hours to get the same level of benefit. So I looked into this a little bit. I haven't done a deep dive on hyperbaric oxygen therapy. I just know that it's been used obviously most commonly for wound healing. It definitely works for wound healing, and the benefits outweigh the risks. So it depends on what you're treating and how bad it is, and whether the benefits that you predict to happen will outweigh the risks. So and I don't think that when I worry about oxygen therapy, it's when people are on oxygen all day long, right? The people who are on supplemental throughout the day, and you have to wean it. Your lungs turns into like a crutch, and you have to wean these people off of it. Higher pressures can also be harmful, right? So higher pressure and higher oxygen can both be harmful for the lung tissue. So again, it's a matter of dose, right? So all toxins are dose dependent, and if you dilute the toxin enough, it's not toxic. And so hyperbaric oxygen, the dose you're getting, 1 hour a day or perhaps 2 hours a day at a lower pressure, is a therapeutic dose and not in the toxic range. So people generally should be benefiting from it and not being harmed by it. Everyone's different, so I would, try it. I've never seen anyone. I know a lot of my patients have done hyperbaric oxygen, and no one has felt worse, for sure. No one's had any harm from it. Some people notice benefit immediately, but it wears off pretty fast. Very few people. I don't know of anyone people have done like 20 hours. I myself never deep dive on this and really looked into it, and I wish I had, because I would have told them, if you're going to start doing it, sign up for 40 hours, and if you're not going to do 40 hours, just maybe there's some benefit still, there probably is, but for the real lasting benefit and the greatest levels of benefit, you're going to want to go for 40 hours plus, right? And for most people to make that feasible, it's going to have to be a rental, because this can, the amount of money you're spending per hour can really rack up really fast. So what I would do, unless you're able to afford it, so basically do what you can afford, do the highest pressure you can afford for the longest period of time, but don't go beyond about an hour a day at 3 atmospheres. So if you're at a lower atmosphere, you could do it maybe twice a day for an hour. And if you don't have any access to hyperbaric oxygen, you could, instead of spending $500 a month, you could spend $500 time for a oxygen concentrator machine. It concentrates oxygen and delivers it to it, say 10 liters a minute. And you can just breathe that, for a couple of hours a day, an hour in the morning, an hour at night, maybe even more than that. And keep track of things, So I think the best way to do this is to check your ABG, the arterial blood gas, and the venous blood gas. So some research on chronic fatigue syndrome suggests for a lot of people is a shunting of the oxygen. So you have arterial oxygen going out to your tissues, and your tissues are not taking it up. So the small blood vessels, the small arterioles, the little, and perhaps even the capillaries, there's inflammation, their walls are thicker, they're not delivering oxygen properly. And so oxygen is not being extracted from your blood, your arterial blood, properly by your end organs and tissues, and then it's just passing along into your venous blood. And so what you would see in that case is normal oxygen tension in the arterial blood, as usual, 99%, 98%, 97%, whatever. There's a range of normal. But then instead of seeing, I don't know what it is, supposed to be like 40 or something. I don't remember from med school, but perhaps it's 40 or whatever. You might see 50 or 60 percent or venous oxygenation. I don't remember. I haven't done a VPG in a while. So regardless, the point is that the venous blood will be a lot higher than it should be. So your tissues should be extracting a significant amount of the oxygen that's coming in, and then the venous blood should be very, very oxygen poor, and that means that you are delivering oxygen to your tissues as normal, as it should be. And if that's not happening, then certainly you can have some fatigue issues and some brain fog issues and all kinds of issues, because all your organs, your brain, everything needs oxygen delivered in order to work properly. So if you're seeing that problem, you want to solve that problem, obviously. And one of the ways to do it is exercise with oxygen therapy. This is something I came across after I talked to Marc Girardot. So this is based on some work done by, I think it was a French researcher, or German, maybe it was German. I don't remember. He has a large tome, a large book that he wrote on oxygen therapy, like graduated oxygen therapy or something. I don't remember the exact name of it. I couldn't find a reasonably priced copy. It was like $500 or something, and even that wasn't in stock. But I'll look for it. I'd like to read it. But based on his research, and he showed that people will improve their oxygen delivery. So people who have this shunting problem, people with chronic fatigue, people with this just aging blood vessels in general, you can correct that with a very short spurt of exercise. So you do 15 minutes of exercise, breathing in 100% pure oxygen. throughout. In order to do exercise with oxygen therapy, you can't just get an oxygen concentrator. You have to get this apparatus. So you use the oxygen concentrator, you connect it to this gigantic balloon that's like a, what is it, 1,000-liter balloon or so, 900 to 1,000 liters. Because the oxygen concentrator doesn't make oxygen fast enough for you to breathe in 100% pure oxygen throughout exercise. Because when you're exercising, you're huffing and puffing and you're breathing a lot more than 10 liters a minute. You might be breathing 50, 60, 70 liters a minute, right? Depending on how hard you're exercising. So you need a giant reservoir of pure oxygen. So you use the oxygen concentrator, you hook it up to this gigantic balloon, you fill up the balloon with oxygen, it takes however long it takes, 10, 15, 20 minutes. 10 liters a minute, I guess it'll take 90 minutes. Yeah, depending on how strong and how fast your oxygen concentrator is. So there's 5 liter per minute oxygen concentrators, there's 10 liter per minute oxygen concentrators. So yeah, you could take 100 minutes if it's going to be 10 liters a minute. For 100 minutes, you'll have 1,000 liters filled up in the bag. So you fill up your 1,000-liter bag, and then you connect it via a tube to a non-rebreather mask. So a non-rebreather means it's got a one-way valve. So the oxygen flows into your mouth and it's sealed, sealed around you. And so you're breathing in pure oxygen from the bag. And then when you breathe out, your out breath, the CO2 doesn't go into the bag, right? So it goes out into the room. So you're breathing 100% oxygen straight from the bag and breathing out into the room. And then while you're doing that, you're on a treadmill or you're an exercise bike or you're lifting a weight or something, so it doesn't have to be, a tremendous amount of effort, but 15 minutes of moderate intensity exercise, that very quickly corrects the shunting problem and corrects the small blood vessel kind of inflammation problem, and turns back the clock or gets rid of the damage that's been done very, very quickly. And you'll find a tremendous improvement in the oxygen delivery to your tissues after just one treatment. And then there was a graph that I saw in one of these presentations for EWAT therapy, where after 3 treatments, so they did a study where they did 3 treatments and then they didn't do anything for the next year. And the improvement persisted for like 12 months after just 3 treatments. Which is pretty incredible, right? So, but people, they'll buy these setups for like $2,000, $3,000. On them on Alibaba, like $800, $900. I don't know if the quality for buyer beware if you're buying it from Alibaba, but obviously these people are making them in China most likely, and but they've done the work to make sure that the manufacturer is, good quality and everything. And then they slap their label on it and they mark it up, quite a bit, maybe 3, 4, 5 times. So some of these, you'll find them. Pure O2 is one of them. One of my patients I recently spoke to benefited from this. He actually got it and started using it and found it to be beneficial. That's a more expensive version. Apparently they, I guess, have some other research that shows if you vary the oxygen concentrations from 100% to lower than normal, that you actually benefit even more. So they have some sort of like built-in program in their machine, and because of that, they think they can charge $5,000 instead of $3,000. I don't know, but he found benefit from it. WOT.com, so that's another supplier of these machines or these setups. Basically, it's just like a giant oxygen concentrator. Oxygen concentrators, they're $500, $600, $700 maybe. Just for the 10 oxygen concentrator. The mask shouldn't be too expensive. A giant 1,000-liter balloon can't be that expensive. So I don't know why people are selling them for so much. They're really marked up quite a bit. Regardless, if you can find a place that does it, places that do HBOT, hyperbaric oxygen therapy, some of them may be offering EWAT. And if you could just do like 15 minutes a few times and see if it benefits you, that would probably be the best way to go about it. But I'm thinking of actually ordering one, taking the leap of faith and ordering one from China and seeing if I can save some money and just see how it works, see how I feel when I use it. And if I do, I'll get back to everyone and let you know. But yeah, I don't know what the, about these oxygen bottles on Amazon, how much oxygen is in them, how long you can breathe it in for. is it really worth it? I doubt it. I mean, it just seems kind of like, people make a lot of money selling water, right? Branded, especially branded water, and they just mark up water like 1,000 times what it actually costs. So you're going to get the same thing with like a small oxygen bottle on Amazon. It's going to be marked up, 1,000 times or 10,000 times what it actually costs to bottle that amount of oxygen. So I would, if you're interested in oxygen, and you want to just try it out without spending a lot of money, I would get a proper oxygen tank, like a full oxygen tank with whatever it is, like 60 liters in there, or maybe it's like 300 liters. I don't know. They have pretty big oxygen tanks, right? So they have probably 200 or 300 liters inside the tank under pressure, um, and try it that way. But yeah, or you could just spring for an oxygen concentrator, or go to like one of these oxygen bars, where they have oxygen on tap, and people sit around and breathe it in. But really, if you're not doing the HBOT, you're just breathing in oxygen, I think that you'll probably have to do it for some time before you're going to see a benefit. It's not going to be something most people are going to find beneficial right away. All right, so we've been going at this for a little while. I think today, maybe until we have our website kind of cleared up, maybe I'll just stay, for the entire time, and we won't switch over. We'll just keep going. Rebecca Miller says, "Who, in your opinion, needs to do a detox protocol? Everyone who has had COVID, everyone who had the vax, anyone who had either and has symptoms. If the latter, please define the symptoms. Thank you." Yeah, I mean, this is all. Yeah, it's like you said. It's my opinion. So the problem here is that I guess I could say who definitely needs to do a detox protocol. It's somebody who has symptoms, whether or not they had the vaccine. So that's for sure. But then there's other people who probably need to do a detox protocol, but there's no way of knowing that they need to do it because they don't have any symptoms. And I guess under that category, I would be pretty certain that somebody who got the shot should do a detox protocol. And then it would be more of a question mark if you didn't get the shot. Do you still need to do it, just, even though you have no symptoms? And I think the only way to really answer that question is to do some sort of testing, because there's no other way to answer it, right? So you might be perfectly fine and you might not. And that also applies to the people who got the shot. Maybe you got a blank shot, maybe you didn't get affected by the shot, maybe, who knows, right? So some people were certainly damaged a lot more, and that damage could be visible, or it could be evident, and it could be hidden. Or so testing, under testing, an easy test, really easy, is just this ABG VBG test, right? Probably will cost you like $30, maybe $15 each, maybe even less. So that's a very cheap test. You can just, as a very, very cheap screening test, maybe just do an ABG and a VBG and compare it and see if they're in the normal range. And if they are, okay, great. You don't have to worry that much. But there could be other things wrong, right? Like you could have microclots. So there's other cheap, easy tests, maybe like a ESR CRP dimer, right? It's not perfect because it's going to miss some people, right? Because some people have all of that normal and they still have a lot of microclots. And so there's no way to see the microclots other than just testing for the microclots. Unfortunately, that's like a $500 test, right? If everyone could get it, I think it would be worth it, because you shouldn't have those microclots. They should not be there. Other tests would be like the Incel DX panel. That's another like $400 or $500 itself. So those are the things that come to mind in terms of testing, and there's a lot more, because we have a whole panel of tests. We have a whole comprehensive spike panel. You're looking at EKG, chest X-ray, echocardiogram. You're looking at troponin. So you can do a lot of that testing, and a lot of it's not too expensive, right? So like a standard, like if you haven't just done a standard CBC, CMP, troponin, D-dimer, ESR, CRP, pro-BNP, these things, looking a and see, looking for organ damage, just general tests, looking for organ damage, probably something that would be worth doing. So yeah, if you got the shot, I think it's much more likely that there was some harm, especially if you got a quote unquote bad batch, which you can look up at howbadismybatch.com. If you have symptoms. So what are the symptoms? The symptoms could be anything, but the typical symptoms are, the issue here is that a lot of aging symptoms, quote unquote aging symptoms, but they just pretty quickly. So normal aging is a very, very gradual thing. All right. It's not like an on-off switch. It's not like one day you wake up and you have, a lot more brain fog than you used to have. That's not aging, right? That's a problem. That's like a spike protein disease or, something from the shot or long COVID or something. So brain fog, fatigue, insomnia, anxiety, depression, these are common ones. Aches and pains can be another one. But then there's a whole lot of like less common ones. There's numbness and tingling and neuropathies and headaches and rashes and changes to bowel movements, changes to lose weight. Actually, some people gain weight. Some people develop diabetes. New conditions suddenly cropping up, like Parkinson's or something. Like suddenly having like sudden hypertension, sudden hypotension, orthostatic problems, so POTS, stuff like that. So those are the typical symptoms, but really I would be worried about any new symptoms. If you suddenly have new symptoms that you didn't have before, you have a new illness that you didn't have before, you're just feeling a little bit more run down. And so it's kind of ill-defined, unfortunately. I would just say new symptoms should be a concern, and it probably doesn't hurt to go ahead and treat it for a few months if you're not sure and you think you might have a problem. I have not seen by taking that augmented NAC. People have this concern about bleeding and stuff like that. I've never seen anyone bleed from taking these supplements. Doctors in general, sure. Like, I think the doctors, when they're prescribing like aspirin, Plavix, Eliquis, and warfarin and stuff like that, is because obviously brain bleed can be catastrophic. It can lead to your death, to a terrible stomach bleed. So those are, the brain bleeds. Typically what you're seeing is somebody who's on a blood thinner who got in a really bad accident, right? They hit their head really hard. Or they were very, very frail and they hit their head by just down the stairs or tripping and falling or hitting their head on the side of the, it's usually in elderly and frail. So those are the people where really you want to be careful about putting them on blood thinners to be in an accident. I wouldn't want somebody on prescription blood thinners if they were like a football player or something, right? So I would be careful about, head injury type situations with prescription blood thinners. However, I have not seen so far. A lot of people have taken these supplements that have blood thinning effects, and I've never seen anyone have serious problems. The stomach bleeds, where they actually end up killing you, and I've seen this happen in a hospital setting. It's the people who have like end-stage liver disease and these gigantic swollen, blood vessels in their stomach called varices that they pop open and you can't stop them. You can't stop the bleeding. You have to like throw down like a tube that has like a balloon on it to try to like tamponade the bleeding. And it's very difficult to control. And, but like a usual stomach bleed from like an ulcer or something, it's usually not like a life-threatening. It can be, but I have never seen somebody actually die from gastric bleeding, except that one time where the person had end-stage liver disease with gastric varices, and there was just like nothing we could do to save this guy. It was really sad. So, and he was not that old. So gastric varices from, alcoholic liver disease can be a death sentence, and you would certainly not want to put something on a blood thinner. But there's, I mean, the everyday kind of stomach bleeding that comes in. I mean, you have stomach bleeding day in, day out in the ER. It's like one of the most common symptoms that somebody gets admitted for and gets an upper and lower endoscopy for. That kind of stuff, that will be from like a arteriovenous malformation in the gut, or from like a stomach ulcer, or whatever, gas and other ulcers, lower down duodenal ulcers. Those, although theoretically you could bleed out if you were on a blood thinner with an ulcer, usually they stop bleeding themselves after they bled a little bit, right? So you'll have like sudden bleeding, and you'll have a bloody stool, or you'll vomit up some blood, and then it stops. And you usually have plenty of time to fix it. Again, I've never seen any of this with people who are being treated for long COVID or vaccine injury. Not a single patient has come to me and said that I had a bleeding problem because you told me to take nattokinase serrapeptase. So that, if your doctor have likely need for detox, what does detox mean, right? Like, how do you detox? So there's different opinions, right? So I interviewed Mark Girardeau recently, and he doesn't think the spike protein is really causing the problem. And other people I've interviewed as well, even naturopaths, some of them say that the detox that they don't even really focus on spike detox at all. The detox that they do focus on, if anything, is detoxing from heavy metals, plastics, microplastics, PFOAs, forever chemicals, and pesticides. Those are the things that most people need to detox from. So there are some great supplements that you can find that'll help you detox from those things. So things like fulvic and humic acid help a lot with glyphosate, and that's in our Spike Buster supplement. And then there are things like activated charcoal and detox supplements. I was actually thinking of maybe doing a comprehensive detox supplement like that. So the one that we have, the Spike Buster supplement, it's got the two things, the things that I think are most important. So breaking up the microclots and the spike protein is the main focus, with the nattokinase and the serrapeptase and the augmented NAC. And then dual purpose of it, the secondary purpose is the fulvic and humic acid, which helps some heavy metals, graphene oxide, and pesticides. So I think that those are very, very important for detoxing in general. So it's a great detox supplement. I think it's the best one out there for long COVID and vaccine injury. But some things that you could consider adding to that would be, let me see if I can find it. Like what I said, the activated charcoal, and there's some others. I came across one. Yeah, there was this all-in-one detox supplement I found by Jagiololia. It's not an easy name to tell people. Jagielololia. That's the brand on Amazon. And so they have activated charcoal, bentonite clay, zeolite clay, chlorella, spirulina, tenacious earth. All that is, so those are all the kind of like, those 6 things are the most important, I think, in the detox world. And out of those, probably the safest and the best one is probably the chlorella. Great for detox, removing a lot of the beneficial stuff. So it's primarily removing the harmful stuff. So chlorella is a great one. The other ones you have to be a little bit careful. So in general, if you take a supplement like that, you could take it maybe daily. So you have to be, one issue with it is if you tend to be constipated, it can make you even more constipated, which is a bad thing, right? So you need to really open up the pathways sometimes before you go for the detox. And that can mean cleaning up your diet, maybe some fasting, just point where, and maybe even some of these enzymes that help break up things and get rid of microclots. So you want to clear pathways. And one of the ways to help, get the liver ready for that detox would be like a castor oil pack at night. So you can buy these castor oil packs online, or at least the pack part of it, and then you pour castor oil on it, heat it up, and kind of strap it on to your liver, cover your liver, and sleep with it, and avoid toxins in your food and stuff. So clean up your diet, and then once your detox pathways are open, and what that means is that your bowels are working properly, you're having good bowel movements every day, then try these binders with plenty of water, and make sure that you're continuing to have good bowel movements. So detox pathways are sweat. You need to sweat every day, have good bowel movements every day, have good urination every day, um, and those are the primary ways of. All right, sorry about that. I'm not sure where I cut out. What was the last thing that you heard? So I'm just trying to figure out what was the last thing people heard. Anyway, what I was talking sleep. So Malungu bark. Oh, it seems like the last thing people heard was detox. um, So you guys didn't hear about Trisha Halverson and the internal tremors? You didn't hear that at all? All right. Seems like I was talking for a while without anyone hearing me. So I'm not sure where I left off on detox. I guess like 10 minutes of what I was saying. I try to wrap up, go back to what I was saying about the detox is that, we've got the supplement. It's got the fulvic and humic acid, and as well as nattokinase serapeptase and augmented NAC in it, and it also has EGCG. So the main purposes here are to break up spike protein and microclots, right? So problem for people with long COVID vaccine injury who has symptoms. Everyone has them, the microclots. So that's the purpose of Spike Buster from my go-to stack. So you can find it at mygotostack.com. It's the best in the world at dealing with microclots specifically, as well as getting rid of graphene oxide, heavy metals, and glyphosate and pesticides, right? So glyphosate is the most common. And if you've listened to Stephanie Seneff talk about it, it may be one of the things, if not the thing, that makes people prone to getting sick from things like vaccines and COVID infections and stuff like that. So glyphosate levels are really important. So it's important to get rid of them. But what I was also wanted to say was that there is a supplement by Jagiololia, Jagielololia, on Amazon. It's an all-in-one detox binder supplement that has some other important things like activated charcoal, bentonite clay, zeolite clay, chlorella, spirulina, and diatomaceous earth. The chlorella is probably the safest of these to take on a regular basis. The other thing I wanted to say about detox is that you got to have your detox pathways open, because these binders can cause constipation. So you want to make sure that you are evacuating, daily at least, and if not, couple of times a day. So as often as you eat, you should be having a bowel movement soon after the eating oftentimes. But like if you eat twice a day, you should have a bowel movement twice a day, ideally. If you eat once a day is probably good enough. If you eat 3 times a day, you might have a bowel movement 3 times a day. But you need to have a regular bowel movement. And so whatever you need to do to get to that point, sometimes castor oil packs on the liver can help, and can help get you ready for that. Sometimes cleaning up your diet, getting rid of all the junk food can help you get ready for that. But basically, whatever you need to do to open up your detox pathways so that you are able to expel toxins properly through your stool and your urine, you should do that before you get started with detoxing. So the next question was from Trisha Halverson, which apparently was completely missed as well. So she's was trying to magic cure for internal tremors that only occur at night when trying to sleep. Started immediately after getting COVID in January this year, with the first symptoms being severe spinal pain, then chronic tremors. So a lot of people deal with this internal tremor thing. What are the things that it could be due to? It could be due to a problem with the autonomic nervous system. Most people with long haul and vaccine injury have, you can see that their vagus nerve is inflamed and it's not working as well. So the parasympathetic side of their nervous system is weaker and it's not being activated as much. So a vagal nerve stimulator can be quite helpful for that, as well as just work, pranayama, yoga, and meditation and relaxation exercise and all of that stuff. Breath work can be really great. The other thing that can be really helpful to help you balance your glutamate and GABAergic, and then also Mulunga is really great for helping you go to sleep. So Mulungu, Mulungu bark. Not sure if I'm pronouncing it properly, but this I've heard amazing things about. I mean, it works really, really well. It's probably the single best supplement for sleep out there in the world today. So give it a try. The other thing that you really need to do, probably, this might be far more important than anything else. You just got to see and try it, but it's hard to predict beforehand what's going to be the key thing for a specific person. But for a lot of people, light exposure is extremely important for sleep. So you need to optimize melatonin levels. And the way to do that, certainly what you eat can help. When you eat can help. So not eating maybe 4 to 5 hours before sleeping can be important. So you want to shift your entire day earlier. So no light after sunset. So that means don't look at a screen, even if it's red light, no light at all. Just don't ever turn on your lights inside your house. Okay. If you really have to and you can't help it, then get like blue blockers that block out all the blue light. Get good quality blue blocker sunglasses and wear them religiously after dark. So ideally, you would just have no lights on at night, and then you would get up, watch the sun in the sun with as much of your body uncovered as possible, 30 minutes, from sunrise to 30 minutes later. You get as much sun as you can, even if it's wintertime, it doesn't matter, right? So you are benefiting from the sunlight. The infrared will pass through your clothing, even if it's winter. You'll get something. You'll get benefit from it. Regardless of where you live, regardless of the time, benefit from the sun. And then continue to go outside regularly throughout the day. So, maybe 30 minutes in the afternoon and another 30 minutes in the late afternoon, and go and watch the sunset in the late afternoon. So watch or be outside during the sunset. Try to spend that last 30 minutes outside as well. The sun goes through your glass, gets filtered, and it removes a lot of the beneficial wavelengths. It removes the infrared, it removes the UVB. So those are not present in the light that's inside your house. You can't tell the difference because those wavelengths are not visible wavelengths, but your body can tell, your brain can tell, your sight. So it's the blue light is more concentrated inside the house than outside. And you need to try to avoid as much as possible. This light it's kind of like it's refined light. Just like refined carbohydrates are bad for you, refined sunlight is bad for you. It's not good for you. So you whole sunlight as much as possible, just like you want whole foods. So get that sunlight as much. That's why I'm sitting outside. All right, that's why you find me outside with this bad connection, and spotty connection. It's so that I can get sunlight as much as possible. That's why I shave my head, so that I can get sunlight. I think shaving your head once in a while is helpful, especially for men who, have this issue with thinning hair more than women. Women get it too, but it's helpful to expose your scalp to direct sunlight once in a while, just to supercharge your hair follicles. So those are some things that might be helpful. If possible, if you need to add melatonin, that's another thing to do. Perhaps supplement with melatonin. But first, I would say try not to. Try to avoid taking supplements of things like hormones, especially melatonin, even vitamin D. If you can get it from sunlight, it's far better for you to get it from food and from sunlight. So whatever you can get from food and from natural sources is going to be a lot more beneficial than what you're getting taken out of its natural context. It may be necessary for some people to take supplements, but as much as possible, try to get it from food and from natural sources. And then one of the last things, the perspective of the vagus nerve, another thing that might help some people is that stellate ganglion block. It's not, it doesn't work for everyone, but when it does work, it just shuts off these internal tremors and they just go away instantly. And you can also look into things like, mind-body medicine can be extremely effective. It requires shifting your belief a lot of times, but people have found it effective. So don't listen to the naysayers. If you've tried everything else, then certainly go and try it. And the way that I think it's working is that some people get stuck in a pattern of inflammation and disease, even though the initiating factor of it is gone. It's almost like a PTSD situation where you're not in the war zone anymore, but you're acting as though you are. Your nervous system is acting as though it's in the war zone still, right? So that's a nervous system disorder, and it's like the disease has been imprinted at a cellular level, and you can, remove that imprint with using your own mind. So lightning process is one. Unlearn Your Pain, I think, .com is another. And take a look at Steve Bierman's work. He's written a couple of books. One of them is Healing Beyond Pills and Potions, and he just is about to publish, or just has published, a new book on worry, get rid of your worry or something like that. Darren says nattokinase comes from soy, which may be high in histamines. Yeah. So it's purified, so that's shouldn't be a problem for most people. These supplements are purified and strained of everything else other than the active ingredient. But some people don't tolerate nattokinase, so if you don't, then you can consider lumbrokinase, which comes from earthworms. So I don't think the nattokinase is not high in histamine itself. The soy can certainly be high in histamine and can cause a problem for people, but not the nattokinase for most people. Some people do have a problem with nattokinase, especially if you're extremely allergic to soy. You can't strain out every last bit of the source that it comes from, but it is highly purified, and there's barely anything other than the nattokinase in it. So it's, for the vast majority of people, it's not a problem. So for most people, it works great. And for the people that it doesn't work for, just leave it out. Use the serapeptase. If you're able to use the lumbrokinase, you can use that as well. And the other thing that you could look into, obviously the aspirin is there for people. So aspirin, serapeptase, augmented NAC is another one that's great. If you don't tolerate augmented NAC, just use regular NAC and try to titrate up the dose. So the dose of augmented NAC is 200 milligrams twice a day. The dose of regular NAC is 50 milligrams per kilogram per day. So it's a lot higher of a dose. You don't have to start at that high dose. You start at a normal dose. Start at 500, 600 milligrams and gradually work your way up to see how far you can tolerate. And at the higher end of the dose range, you might find that if you don't tolerate augmented NAC, you might not tolerate regular NAC at the higher range either. But regardless, the NAC, whether it's regular or augmented, depending on the dose, is also going to do the same thing. It's going to break up the microclots. It's going to expel them into the urine. Someone anonymous says, unfortunately, I've developed an eye disease called meibomian gland dysfunction 14 months after taking the first COVID-19 jab. I'm at stage 2 to 3 severity. I think I got this disease only partly due to the COVID-19 jab. I'm under the care of an eye doctor and GP for the illness. I tried seeing a naturopath for the condition, and to some extent she was helpful. She recommended warm eye drops, not cold, to avoid constricting blood vessels in my eyes. Her herbal eye drops were not helpful to me. Any suggestions on what works for others to recover from this illness? So I would look into really, really good quality organic honey that is diluted with pure water, and try that out perhaps as an eye drop. It can be very beneficial, especially if it's local. But regardless, just the quality is more important than the locality. So try to get it in a glass jar. Try to get it raw honey in a glass jar that's organic and very, very high quality. So no plastics and no processing, and then dilute it into water, pure water and clean water, and then create your own eye drop and see if that helps. The other thing is, the light can be super important for eye health. So spend as much time as possible outdoors and watch the sunrise, watch the sunset, spend that 30 minutes after sunrise in the sun, facing the sun. And you can also get an infrared lamp and use infrared therapy on your eyes. So infrared therapy is super beneficial for your eyes. And then avoiding screens. If you do have to use a screen, then turn it red. So I have this shortcut on my screen. If I can't read something red, then I just triple click the right button, this button on the right, and it turns blue. I triple click it again and it turns red. And this is found in settings. So you go to settings and go to accessibility, and then go to probably audio visual. No, I don't remember. There's a link in my Twitter that display text size. I have a link in my Twitter that showed that's not it. This helps because the blue light can be harmful for your eyes. I don't remember where it is in here. Maybe it's not in accessibility. Maybe it's in display and brightness. No. On the computer, it's definitely under accessibility. It's going to annoy me. I'm going to keep looking at it. This is... So under accessibility shortcut, I have color filters selected, which is why I can triple click on the side. But where do you find the color filter itself? It's not under audio visual. Anyway, it's in my Twitter feed somewhere. Somebody tweeted out how to how to set this up. So you can find it there. I can't believe I can't find it right now. As soon as I turn off the live stream, it'll just come to me, right? Like that's how it works. All right, so let's move on from this incredibly interesting interlude on. Anyway, so my phone is red, right? The other thing I'm thinking of doing is actually just ditching the smartphone and moving to something called Light Phone, which is like LIGHTPHONE, which is an e-reader phone screen. So it doesn't have I don't think it has a backlight. You have to like be in the light to be able to read it. So, but it looks like it's e-ink, an e-ink screen, which I think it would be even better. And I'm actually thinking of getting a monitor, which is an e-ink monitor as well. They're not as nice and fancy and as regular monitors, obviously, and you have to like refresh them once in a while because the e-ink kind of gets stuck on the screen or whatever. But they're far better for your eyes, that's for sure. I do keep my computer red, not as red as my phone, but in the same range. And I have a MacBook Air, so on the MacBook Air, it's under accessibility and then display. And then you scroll to the bottom and you see color filters, and you turn them on, and then you select, and you just like scroll it to the right, and it's super red. And if you have trouble seeing it, then you just make it a little bit less extreme. So yeah, the lights can make a big difference to the eyes, including the meibomian glands. The other thing I mean, there's a lot of things, hot compresses and things, maybe even a castor oil pack might even be helpful there as well. But yeah, maybe doing regular hot compresses. Let's look up meibomian gland dysfunction. So I've never had anyone come with this big problem. Apparently antibiotics can sometimes help, so it may be an issue with bacteria. And, maybe it's something like a bacterial infection or even like a disruption in healthy bacteria, in that area. So So yeah, you might want to look into, there's somebody, some people have found that when they take antibiotics, they get better, right? It's kind of hit or miss though. That's the problem. There's no like science that we can really point to say that this specific antibiotic will work for this specific person and get them better. But some people have taken amoxicillin and other antibiotics and gotten better. So there's a person on Twitter who talks about this a bit. I think it's called Remission Biome, and she found that I think she was taking a small list of supplements along with probiotics and an antibiotic, and she went into complete remission from chronic fatigue syndrome. And I'm not sure if it was specifically long COVID or vaccine injury, but she had pretty severe symptoms and eventually on that antibiotic that are there. But yeah, like you kind of hinted at here, things sometimes, why they hit you in this specific way, that is because that's like where you have specific weakness that is not present in everyone else, right? So sometimes like this particular meibomian gland dysfunction was something that you were prone to, right? Whereas most people are not. So most people have a certain picture of the illness of spike protein vaccine injury. But then there's a lot of these edge cases where a specific person is affected in a specific way just because they have this, they're prone to that particular problem. All right, Brad Powers says, I've been exposed to someone on the front end of COVID. Would taking a daily regimen of ivermectin and supplements help curb the chances of infection? Just asking before I dip into my reserves. Yeah, absolutely. Taking it after an exposure can definitely be helpful. I still, the number one thing, the number one most effective thing I've ever seen in my own life and in the lives of others is high dose oral vitamin C. It sounds ridiculous. It sounds crazy to a lot of people. And a lot of people look at me and they hear the dose that I'm talking about and they immediately write it off and they just say, you're a whackbot. And I'm not even going to consider it. I've seen it with my own eyes. My wife has done it. I've seen it work for her. I've seen it work for my kids. I've seen it work for other patients. I've seen it work for my friends. I've seen it work for so many people at this point that nothing comes close to this. Ivermectin doesn't come close. Hydroxychloroquine doesn't come close. Nothing. No medicine I've ever seen. Antibiotics don't come close. Nothing comes close to high dose oral vitamin C in terms of the speed and the efficacy. The issue is that there's no like one dose that you can tell everyone to take. Like my son takes like a microdose compared to me. He takes 5 grams. Okay, that's 5,000 milligrams. I have to take 40 grams all at once. All right. I've tried doing a little bit less. I've tried spreading it out. It just doesn't work as well. It still works, but it doesn't work as well. So my criteria for like the right dose is that within 24 hours, you are completely back to normal. You have no symptoms. All right. That's what I've seen time and again happen. Obviously it does depend on how early you get to it. If you get to it in like a week into it, you're going to have a different result than if you get to it on day one. So every time I've taken 40 grams of ascorbic acid by mouth on day one of an upper respiratory infection, it is completely gone within 24 hours. I get a couple of episodes of diarrhea, sometimes a little bit of bloating, some gas and bloating, a couple of episodes of diarrhea. That's kind of par for the course. You're going to get some diarrhea when you take that much vitamin C. And then I wake up and I'm perfectly fine, 0 symptoms. So I would do that if you start to get symptoms. And for a lot of people, I think this is great because many people like yourself hesitate to take the ivermectin, right? It's like you don't want to dip into the reserves. Whereas vitamin C is like you can find it on any, in any pharmacy, in any health food store, on, hundreds of websites, thousands of websites. It's easily available, right? It's not a big deal. You can dip into your reserves of vitamin C without worrying or, thinking twice about it. But yes, the supplements can help. Taking a megadose of vitamin D can be helpful. Taking a megadose, maybe not that high of a dose if you have no symptoms. I just don't see, like you don't want to like hit it with everything you've got until you're sure you've got it. But yeah, a dose of ivermectin or maybe like a 0.4 milligram per kilogram, or maybe like a dose taken daily for a couple of days can definitely lower the chances of you developing vitamin C, and all that stuff that you usually COVID. Absolutely, you can take the supplements to curb the chances of getting infected, as well as just getting sun is for getting rid of or preventing an infection from happening. So spending a lot of time outdoors can be very beneficial, helpful. And again, avoiding the light after the light toxicity is really something that people just don't understand, and it's very difficult to get people to take me seriously on it. But your sleep will not be as deep and refreshing and as protective from you getting sick if you are exposed to light after dark. It shuts off the melatonin. So, melatonin ramps up slowly after sunset and eventually hits a peak, and then you fall asleep. As that slow rise immediately drops to zero as soon as your eyes are exposed to light. You open the fridge, light, boom, melatonin zero. And it's not just blue light that causes harm to people. So any light at all, even red light, it's more of the intensity of the light, and the way that affects people is with cortisol. So cortisol is supposed to be really high in the morning, right? When you wake up and you're ready for the day, you're ready for the stress of the day. And then it's supposed to be really low at night. That's the other issue, going back to the sleeping problems for people and the link to the light. It's not just melatonin, it's also cortisol is elevated by any light at night in some people. So a lot of people can't even red light. So there may not be enough for a lot of people to get rid of that cortisol issue. So a lot of people there with long COVID vaccine injury, their cortisol curve is flipped. It's upside down. It's like and they're exhausted in the morning, and it's really high at night, right? And wired and tired, right? They can't go to sleep. So you got to fix that cortisol dysfunction as well. This reminds me of something about the cortisol. Something to do with thyroid hormone and supplementing it. Yeah. So there's this like feedback loop between cortisol and thyroid hormone. So I think what it was is that stress and high cortisol levels, go along with inflammation, and that lowers thyroid hormone, right? And then if you take thyroid hormone and you artificially raise it by taking it in a pill form, that will also raise cortisol levels. So it'll further raise your cortisol levels and make it harder to correct the underlying problem, right? So this is the reason that I don't like going straight to supplementing hormones, because there's always these feedback loops, right? So you might end up in this vicious cycle where you can never fix the underlying problem because you've tried to fix a branch that happens later downstream from the initial problem. So the initial problem is like inflammation and stress, and you're not getting better, and you have a lot of cortisol, and that's causing other hormones to go down. Your testosterone, your thyroid are going down. And then if you fix the underlying, too much cortisol because of stress and inflammation problem, then these other hormones will naturally go back up, right? As long as you're doing everything you need to do to support them to be high. Probably the number one thing that's least, thought of with testosterone is competition. I mean, what raises testosterone? It's being hyper competitive. So if you have low testosterone, sunlight is important for you. Diet is obviously important for you. Sleep and rest, all of these things, like, healthy lifestyle and all that. But the thing that's missing for a lot of men is probably just competition. So go and like join a Brazilian jiu-jitsu gym, and compete with other men, and that'll raise your testosterone. But at the same time, you need to fix the underlying inflammation, right? So you can do everything possible in terms of lifestyle, and your testosterone still will not go up if there's some other reason that your body wants it to be low, right? So you need to address the inflammation. That's the main thing. You need to address the out of control inflammation and stress that's also seen as inflammation, which creates inflammation in your body as well. Break the vicious cycle of stress and inflammation and stress, and just get out of that. Tanya says, I recently caught COVID for a second time after the last 2 years of long COVID from the first one. Yikes. I'm struggling with lingering fatigue, profound at times, and POTS, which was my weak spot prior to COVID. At times, I feel wired as if I'm stuck in fight or flight mode. Acupuncture made this worse. What are some things you can suggest I look? So, when something makes you feel worse, that might actually be a sign that you're on to the right treatment, right? So, just because it makes it worse doesn't mean that it's not working. A lot of times detox will make you, there's this worsening of the specific symptoms that you already have when you hit on the right treatment. So I would actually go back to the acupuncturist and let them know that you felt worse, and maybe they'll, adjust it a little bit, take it down a notch so that it's not as hard for you to manage. But help you clear it out. So I think they're on to something. If they were able to make you feel worse, they are on to something. They're on to something. So go and I would return to that person, because they are definitely on to something with that treatment. So, just randomly sticking needles into somebody is not going to make their symptoms worse. So I think they are on the right track. It just might have been a little bit too much too soon. So yeah, and I see the same thing with medications. When a medication makes your specific symptom that you already have worse, it's often the right medication for you. It's just the dose might be a little bit too high, so you stop it, symptoms go back to baseline, start at much lower dose and gradually work your way up. So that's one thing. The other thing that can help is trying to, again, clear the pathways for detox, right? Make sure your bowels are functioning, make sure you've addressed the microclots, and maybe start taking aspirin and some of the enzymes to clear up the microclots so that you can move stuff through your blood properly as you're trying to get out of your body. There's nothing blocking its way out. And then, I've already talked about this fight or flight kind of being stuck thing. It's related to a lot of things. It's related to light after dark, and not enough light early in the day. It's related to not enough melatonin. It can be related to food. It can be related to eating at the wrong time, the wrong things. It can be related to a lot of stuff, right? It can be related to your inflamed vagus nerve. So there's a lot of things you can do. Sometimes ashwagandha and shilajit are very beneficial, and Mulungu bark can be very beneficial for helping you sleep properly. But basically, you want to fix the cortisol problem and the glutamate GABA imbalance in the brain, and the problem with the autonomic nervous system and the vagus nerve. So, I haven't said it yet today, but for a lot of people, escalating doses of ivermectin are very, very, very effective. I've never had anyone have to go beyond 0.8 milligrams per kilogram per day, but I have heard of people going as high as 2 milligrams per kilogram per day for acute or chronic issues, and if you're able to tolerate it. And one way to help you tolerate a higher dose that you may not be able to tolerate otherwise is to split it up and take it 2 or 3 times a day. What's the difference between compounded ivermectin from the pharmacy and Iverheal from India off All Day Chemist? Is there even any difference? Yeah, so the compounded ivermectin from a U.S. pharmacy, the quality, I think, is going to be far better. If you're a U.S. sourced ivermectin, it's just always going to be better quality. So what I will say, people in India would not want to buy Indian ivermectin. All right. I have family in that area, okay, of the world. And I've been to that area of the world. Okay. I've been to the Indian subcontinent, and I've been to India. I've been to Pakistan, both. And, they used to be one country, but regardless, right? So I've been to both. And no one in their right mind goes to the pharmacy in that country, in either of those countries, in India, and asks for the Indian brand of any medication if they can afford the foreign brand, all right? Anyone who can afford the foreign brand knows that you don't buy the local brand, all right? You don't trust it, all right? So please stop trusting Indian pharmacies with your health. One patient, I think they were somewhere in Europe at the time, consulted me. She got her hands on Indian ivermectin, American ivermectin, and European ivermectin. And the only difference between these three was that the Indian ivermectin gave her chest pain every time she took it, right, without fail. She stopped, as you should too. yeah, people think you're crazy. They would think Americans are literally insane for going this route, right? When they have access to American manufacturers of the same medication. So the price, it's an issue of, but I mean, if you're using our pharmacies that we found, like, price is not cheaper from India. Is for, like, the last time I checked, getting it from India and paying for the shipping and everything is way more expensive than getting it from one of our pharmacies. And even when you pay me my fee, my doctor's fee to write the prescription, and then you pay the pharmacy to buy the medicine, and you combine those two prices, it's still cheaper, the last I checked, than All Day Chemist. So it's like, there's no reason to go to All Day Chemist. I don't understand why people do it, unless they just don't know that it's really not cheaper, especially at the higher doses, right? Like, if you know that you need like 0.6 milligrams per kilogram of ivermectin, I'll prescribe that much ivermectin in one capsule from this compounding pharmacy. And then instead of having to take like, 3 12-milligram tablets, whatever it is that you get from All Day Chemist, you can just take one capsule, and the capsule pricing basically doesn't vary, right? It's like the cost of it is the cost to capsule it, right? It's not the cost of the powder. The powder is like nothing. It's like cents, it costs like a few cents to get the powder. The price that you're paying for is the price to put the powder in the capsule and capsule it up and ship it to you. All that processing is where the cost comes from. So especially if you're looking at like a 0.6 milligram per kilogram dose for yourself in one capsule, there's nothing cheaper than this. There's like 3 or 4 pharmacies that we found in the US. If you want the names of them, we'll give them to you. Just contact my office. We'll tell you the cheapest pharmacies in the US for ivermectin are these 3 or 4 compounding pharmacies that ship everywhere in the country. On any one day, one of them will be, a lot cheaper than the others, and we'll go with that one unless they're out of it. And so they're all very close in price, and sometimes one is cheaper than the other, and we go with the cheapest one on whatever day, whenever it's available and whenever the person needs it. And if you really can't afford my prescription fee, you want to take another, chunk of that price off of it, just tell my staff I sent you to waive the fee, okay? Tell them Dr. Haider said waive his prescription fee, he's going to write the prescription for free. I can't afford, to pay the fee. I just, I need my ivermectin, and I need the cheapest ivermectin possible in the world. So we'll take care of you. Manveer says, I ate dinner, stood up 5 minutes later, and felt so terribly dizzy I had to lay down right away. Is the spike protein causing this to feel like nothing's working for my blood pressure drops? So I'm not claiming that the spike protein itself is causing this, right? So I think that Mark Girardeau has a great point. If you go back in my Twitter feed, you'll find Mark Girardeau's interview that I did with him. I think you can watch the whole thing there. You can also go to pro.longcovidreset.com, watch the whole thing there. You can find it on our Rumble channel, Dr. Syed Haider. I think he has a great theory for what might be causing the problem, which is a bolus theory. I'm not going to spend, a whole lot of time going into the details of it, but basically anytime you inject something into a lot of it enters into your bloodstream, even though it's not supposed to. And if a large quantity of it gets into your bloodstream all at once, it can go and hit like a certain artery or a certain organ, something. It can go somewhere, and depending, the timing, when it enters the bloodstream and your cardiac cycle, and like where exactly it enters, depending on all these, specifics, it can hit different organs. It could hit your brain, it could hit your heart, it could hit your liver, it could hit your kidneys. It could cause a problem in this or that spot, right? And it'll actually destroy blood vessels. So that's the way this thing works, right? Like, it's transfection, right? So the vaccine contents, the lipid nanoparticles enter the blood cells, they enter the blood vessel wall, and then the blood wall, the cells in the blood vessel wall start to create the spike protein, and then the immune system comes and destroys them, and then there can be some bleeding, or there can be some clotting, there can be some damage, right? So there's all different patterns of this damage depending on which blood vessels may have been destroyed. So that's his bolus theory. And he has, a pretty good reasoning to back it up. It makes sense. If that is the cause, so you do find spike protein in that area as well. You do find systemic microclotting as well. And that could be due to, the spike protein itself. It could be due to that vascular damage that's happening from his bolus theory. It's causing clotting. But yeah, his theory is that if the bolus theory is correct, then probably what you need is to stimulate stem cells to heal that damage. But you can also use exercise with oxygen therapy, maybe beneficial in healing that vascular damage, as well as stimulating stem cells. But the stem cells take a while, right? It doesn't happen overnight. It happens over the course of weeks and months, and so you need to continue the hyperbaric oxygen therapy that stimulates stem cells for quite a while before you end up finding that you're significantly improved. But yeah, so this thing it's an autonomic dysfunction that you're talking about, eating dinner and then suddenly feeling dizzy. So obviously when you eat, some blood is going to get shunted to your stomach, right, to take care of the food and to get the nutrients out of your food. Much blood goes into your digestion, you can have your blood pressure suddenly drop and you feel dizzy. So obviously, like in a normal situation, you're not supposed to have like all to your stomach, right? But this is the problem that happens with people who get a vaccine injury, is that their nervous system's not working properly and it's not controlling their vasculature properly anymore. And so people have POTS, they have blood pressure issues, and so it is quite common. And it goes away, and a lot of people just gradually over time. Other people have to do things to help it go away. So you might need to do a comprehensive protocol, to help yourself and get over this. Barbara says, what's the best way to fight this inflammatory response? So inflammation is not necessarily bad, right? So that's important to understand. And inflammation isn't just one thing, right? So your immune system is very complex, right? So inflammation could mean a specific arm of the immune system is overactive, and in somebody else, that arm is it's not doing anything. It's not active at all. And some other arm of the immune system is overactive. So there are dozens of cells that are part of the immune system that can be activated, overactivated, underactivated, not activated at all. And so how do you fight the underlying problem? The best way, personally, if you ask me, I think mind-body medicine is, you got to start there with mind-body medicine. You got to focus on the beliefs and anything that's standing in the way of that person getting better from a psychological perspective. That is number one, okay? Number two is your lifestyle. Lifestyle covers a lot of things. The overarching view of like what you need to do is you need to get rid of toxins and you need to maximize nutrients, right? And then blood flow is really important, right? So you can have all the nutrients you need, but if for some reason your body is limiting blood flow to a certain area, then they won't be delivered and the toxins won't be taken away. And so a lot of people have this blood flow limitation problem. That can be due to inflammation. It can be due to a mind problem, right? Your mind can change the flow of blood to different of your body. So this is where mind-body medicine comes back. This psychological part is back. And it's not that it's like you're imagining it. It's not that at all. The point is that your mind is so powerful that it can actually change how much blood goes to this organ or that organ, or this foot or that foot, right? Like you can literally, if you read Healing Beyond Pills and Potions by Steve Bierman, where he like, he was a hypnotist. He was so good at what he did, and also an ER doctor, that somebody would walk in gushing blood from a wound, and he would give them this kind of like subtle suggestion to stop bleeding, basically. And they would stop bleeding. The wound would stop bleeding, right? Like he was too busy to like bandage it or, suture it or whatever right then. So he would just go up to them and touch them and say, stop bleeding. The wound would stop bleeding, right? And then he would go and do whatever he had to do over there, save somebody's life, come back and suture the wound. And these people would look at him kind of like, they would laugh when he would say, stop bleeding, stop your finger from bleeding. And they'd be like, what? Are you serious? But it would actually happen there. And he's not making it happen. Their own mind is making it happen, right? Their own body is doing that. And it's not your finger that's making your finger stop bleeding. It's this, right? You're hearing something from somebody, you're interpreting, you're understanding what he's saying, and your subconscious is doing that work for you. He would do the same with people who would go for like a major surgery. He would like give them these suggestions that the entire like surgical field won't bleed. Okay. During your surgery, so there's a lot of blood that gets lost when you're cutting open and you're reaching for, like, you have to cut through all these surface layers and all this fat and all this muscle and all this stuff, right, to get down to the kidney. So there's going to be a lot of little bleeding vessels all over the place that you usually have to cauterize, and you have to like, suck out the blood and, return it to the person, or, toss it. But he would have these bloodless fields during surgery where there would be no bleeding, right? And again, the person's not even awake at that point, right? And yet their subconscious mind has taken that suggestion and made sure that this area where we are going to be cutting things open and having a surgery while I'm unconscious, okay, is not going to bleed, right? Like, the level of intelligence in your body is off the charts, right? Like, we can't even explain it, right? So every single cell in your body has intelligence. There's cellular intelligence, there's organ level intelligence, there's body-wide intelligence, and a lot of it is subconscious intelligence. Like, we're not actually aware, right? There's other level of intelligence, our awareness, and there's this subconscious level. We are over time, so I'm going to be wrapping it up soon. But I cannot stress enough the importance of mind-body. You got to include mind-body medicine in your protocol if you are not getting better. You've tried all the physical interventions, you've tried all the things you can afford. Do mind-body medicine, right? That's number one. And then lifestyle medicine is super important, and it goes beyond what most people usually think of lifestyle. It goes into the light issue, right? So sunlight is way more important than people imagine, and then the toxicity of artificial lighting is far worse than most people imagine. So it's like, I struggle with trying to figure out a way to explain how important it is. It's an education problem, right? So you have to educate people, but that's why infrared, therapy can be so important for people. So the infrared, incredibly important for inflammation, right? So getting just an infrared light bulb and just like plug it in, take off your clothes, lie down in front of it for 15 minutes, and then flip over 15 minutes on the back, get as much of your body into that, light as possible. Just do that twice a day, right? That can have tremendous benefits to get rid of inflammation. Ice therapy, right? Tremendously beneficial and very anti-inflammatory. So, the cold plunge, if you can't do a cold plunge, maybe buy like an ice vest, right? Like, there are these vests that have these gel packs in them that you can put into the freezer. You freeze it, then you just draw a cold bath, put the vest on, sit down in the bath, and, maybe you can't afford to buy like a proper cold plunge unit, or like even a DIY one. Like, I made just a chest freezer that I filled up with water. I jump into it, but if that's too much, then just start off putting your face into ice water, right? And do it as long as you can comfortably, and then take it out, and then gradually work your way up, and then do your face and your hands eventually. And so you just gradually work your way up to putting more and more of yourself, making more and more of yourself cold. Move on to like the ice, vest, and then maybe move on to a bath with the ice vest, and then maybe move on to an entire cold plunge. But there's a lot of things for inflammation that are very, very effective, and obviously food is very important. Food, and fasting, right? So just not eating for 3 days or 7 days, right? If you can, right? If you can do that safely, if you're not extremely underweight, and even if you are, if you can do it under supervision. And but yeah, the fasting is incredibly anti-inflammatory, because a lot of the inflammation just comes from food itself and the metabolic process. So, and then you need to, optimize nutrients. But like, what is the best way to fight the inflammatory response? I mean, I gotta say that the best way to do anything in your body is to go to the controller, right? subconscious can flip any switch in your body anywhere, right? It can control anything happening anywhere within it. It can control the level of subconscious and access that. You can go and you can access. Somebody can help actually these patients anymore, but if you can find him, track him, he's at that kind of, or you can learn to do it yourself, and it's not a thing, right? In afternoons, with the lightning process, it's a 3-day seminar, or you can, there's a lot of other people that work. Got to find one of these things that works for you, and implement it. All right, everyone, thanks for watching, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye.